Until somebody runs through and they're like,
I know, beeping.
These are for production.
I'm here with John Dickinson from KNBR, 49ers reporter. We found ourselves a little spot right here to talk, and there may be some beeping or other stuff that happens, but JD, let's talk for 15, 20 minutes before the Niners get on the field. Well, there's so many different ways to go, but I will say, so today we just saw Fred Warner and Nick Bosa talk, and Kyle Shanahan. And I can't imagine there's been a Super Bowl participant like we have here, where the two defensive players spend more time talking about our effort needs to be better going into the Super Bowl. I thought that was pretty eye-opening to hear two guys talk about our effort hasn't been good enough in the NFC Championship game, sorry to yell, and the game that preceded the division.
Blew me away that was part of the conversation when you look at not only the 49ers having a bye, but playing a poor first half against the Green Bay Packers and then having to bounce back and knowing that they were going to be playing a more talented offensive unit in the Lions. That was jarring, and it makes me wonder if maybe there was a little bit of, I always talk about the zero upside game, right? I think the 49ers, at least in the game against the Packers, had a rare zero upside playoff game, right? Where there doesn't feel like there's a lot at stake if you win it. It's just the box that's supposed to be checked, and then you move on to the next. But when you look at that, I think, that makes it more difficult to get up. It makes it basically like an October game or a November game.
Right.
But to be warned by the fact that you almost got beat and then not be able to come back and play with an effort level that you think is standard when you're a franchise that basically from jump has been trying to win a Super Bowl this season, that was pretty incredible.
Yeah. Tim Kawakami has joined us now.
Yes. Hi, Tim.
There's a couple of dudes on a golf cart.
TK.
Fire that bad boy up, Tim. Drive us out.
The Chase Young clip went around, obviously quite a bit. Do you think that mattered? Do you think that actually showed anything? Do you think there's anything? Does it tell you anything about them or their defense?
I think it tells you that they're not good enough to coast, maybe at the level that they were good enough to coast in prior years, or that they were good enough to coast at the level that they maybe had coasted at different points in this season. I mean, the first 5 games of this season, they looked like a dominant defense. And then in the middle 3, it didn't quite look that way. They sort of refound it, but then the Ravens basically broke everything down. And in the playoffs, they've been leaky, really, with the loss of Cleveland Farrell. I think they've missed Hufanga in the run game. Yeah. His ability to come up and play in the box and really step. And they, going back between Logan Ryan and Jair Brown, and they're just a little bit more leaky at each level, I think. And let's be honest, I mean, Fred Warner has not been Fred Warner. He has had some big-time second halves. Dre Greenlaw's been flying around making plays, but I think we've seen more missed tackles from Fred Warner, not effort-related necessarily, although he said that his effort, which I thought was the most stunning comment, he said, my effort wasn't,
he was saying he wasn't 100% of the plays is what he was saying. Yeah,
well, I don't know that I would say that. I don't know that I would ever say that if I were Fred Warner, who's somebody that is known for being a guy that is 100% all the time. And I guess the context of it was, hey, how can I be one to call others out if I can look at myself on film and know that I wasn't 100% of the time? So there is some context to what the question was.
The reality is they need Chase Young. They need him to play.
And he was better in the second half. I thought he was flying around in the second half.
The problem was the play that he took off was a touchdown, right? That was a fundamental problem with that. He picked the wrong play in the wrong spot to take off, So I think that was a fundamental. That's part of why that thing looked the way it looked. But anyway, that was just pretty eye-opening. You got a team, which you can look at it either way.
But all that's off the table. Am I allowed to curse?
Do whatever you want.
All that bullshit's off the table now. All the bullshit's as far as this team's in the Super Bowl.
Well,
they're making the statement that they have to like. The other big takeaway is they're playing Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, and I think they know what they're up against and know that it's.
So you don't think we'll see a clip? To me, I agree. It doesn't matter what happened unless it is an indication of what is going to happen.
Well, and I think that was more to try and bring the conversation forward. The reason that they were so open in admitting it is we'll get killed if there's any of that, and there shouldn't be any of that because this is the freaking Super Bowl,
right,
for crying out loud. And
right.
I think, to me, it was almost an admission, hey, we got away with this or that. It can't be the same moving forward, and it won't be the same moving forward, or like this thing's a wrap. I mean, you might as well just fly down and fly back.
Bosa said he's trying not to get too high too soon because he doesn't want to wear himself out before the Super Bowl. You know, we're sitting here, it's Thursday. But we're
Bosa putting the officials on notice too with the hold. A lot of discussion about the holding.
Larry Krueger asked him what stands out about the tackles, and he said, "Oh, the Chiefs tackles," and he said they hold. That's what he said.
Yeah, and again, and I mean, Jed York met with the media. He was asked what was the big thing he remembers from Super Bowl 54 in Miami, and he said, Nick Bosa getting held on 3rd and long. Like, that's the play.
But everybody has said that. I thought what was different about Nick is Nick, when asked about that play, was like, yeah, I got help. Like, Nick was more interested in setting up for Sunday. They can't do this to me now. Who cares what happened?
Right.
2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And, even, so many unique things that start as you prep.
We'll edit this.
Okay. Bosa was talking, and there's so many different things that pop into your mind as you start to really gear up and look at, not only the 2019 Super Bowl matchup, February 2020, but it's more about, because I don't think, this is a different Chiefs team, it's a different 49ers team, everybody knows that, but there were things that Nick specifically said that they did in the 2022 game, which was last year, and I think a little bit more relevant with a lot of the same players on the 49ers defense, as far as the way that the Chiefs attacked him specifically, that he said, I'm going to be ready for that this time. Like, that ain't happening.
They really stretched him out. Remember that?
They
Niners
really
defense.
did. They were the first team, and it was interesting in kind of relating it back to the Packers and Lions games. They were the first team that really went to the edges against the 49ers defense. Really made them look bad, on the edges, both throwing to it and running to the edges. And I think there are elements of what we saw Green Bay do. I know we're talking a year and a half in between, and what the Lions were able to do. It made me think, oh yeah, the Chiefs did that to them in that game in October of 2022, when all of the headlines and everything were basically about Christian McCaffrey's remarkable ability to play in less than 48 hours after joining the team.
So Jed York just talked. You mentioned McCaffrey. We just saw Jed York. Listen to him. People asked him questions, that sort of thing. He said that it was Lynch and him that convinced Kyle to trade for Christian McCaffrey, which I'll tell you my take on that. Because he was saying Kyle was like, Kyle was very hesitant. I don't want to, it's a lot to pay.
He's thinking big picture.
And Jed and John Lynch are going, well, you don't want LA to get him. Here's my take.
Well, you know what's interesting about that?
What?
Just real quick.
Yeah.
I've always assumed it would be
Everybody
flipped.
does. But I'll tell you why. Everybody thinks it would have been Kyle trying to get Christian.
Didn't want McVay to get him after they just won.
When you're like a freshman in college and you go home to visit, and you told your mom or your dad, like, yeah, I'm home tonight, we're gonna hang, and then you get invited to go out.
Sorry,
and
Mom.
you're like, no, and you don't say that. You say, hey, my friends invited me, but that's okay. Like,
See, I didn't do that, but I digress.
I'm gonna stay in. Like, I haven't seen you guys, and your parents are like, no, it's fine. We'll see you tomorrow. Like, just go. And I think that's what Kyle was doing. I think Kyle had to make sure that if they were going to do it, it wasn't going to be him, the offensive guy with a connection to Christian, sacrificing for his defense, taking from John Lynch and his scouts, taking from that group of people, just to serve himself. I think he had to make sure that it wasn't him saying to them, like, basically, forget I want this guy, so I'm going to get what I want.
It was a let it play out. Kind of like it was Kyle letting it play out.
He just had to make sure they were really on board, I think. This is just me. This is just my guess. Because on what planet would Kyle Shanahan say, no, that's too much. We need those picks for a third-round tight end. Oh, you're fine. Keep walking. No.
My whole thing had always been the McVay-Rams rivalry as it related to that. Like, I thought there was no way in hell, given the fact that they had just went and got Stafford that offseason prior to when they won the Super Bowl. And what was it? They were in Cabo, right? Remember, Kyle was in Cabo, and Stafford was having meetings with McVay, and Kyle's on the beach drinking a beer. Meanwhile, McVay's getting his Super Bowl quarterback.
That would scar you.
So, to me, it would be there's no way that's happening again. And plus, I think both those teams were in similar places at that point. I mean, that was the second straight year where the 49ers were in a little bit of trouble. In the middle of the season, they got smoked by the Chiefs in that game. McCaffrey does end up coming in. And really, it leads now over the last year and a half, I think, back to McCaffrey helped the 49ers offense take a level up from where it was. And then Brock Purdy came in December and helped to take the 49ers offense up another level. And so now they're 2 levels, I think, better offensively than they were on that day in October of 22.
So this was the other, correct me if I'm wrong, revelation. Jed York said that Kyle came to him the year they got Brock. So Trey Lance is the starter. Jimmy, we might as well keep him. But
hanging around.
To the outside world, it appears that they are all in on Trey Lance, that they fully believe in him. And they are giving him the reins and giving him a chance.
He was getting all the first team reps.
But I've just played the clip. Kyle came to him before, we're talking about the year Trey got hurt.
Right,
and said,
before he got hurt.
Our best quarterback is the third guy. What do you think about that?
That doesn't surprise me because, and I know you were out there, Trey Lance was not having a good training camp. He was not. I know a lot of people didn't want to say it, but he was really struggling to the point where I thought at the time, and I think maybe you did too, when the opportunity presented itself for Jimmy Garoppolo to return, the 49ers wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to return in part because they didn't know if Trey Lance was going to be able to be the starting quarterback for the entirety of the season. Not because of injury, but because of play. And I maintain, and I've said this at the time, that Trey Lance could have not been hurt and been healthy for the whole year. He was going to get benched at some point, especially if the 49ers got off to 1-2, 2-3, 3-4 starts. Like at some point, he was not going to be playing well enough to continue to have that position. I thought Jimmy was going to be the guy that Kyle was going to ultimately go to.
Which he would have been.
Which he would have been once he was going to be around. But I also think the injury prevented all of that, right? The injury was like, wow, this stroke of Jimmy Garoppolo can step in. You know what you can do with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think Kyle was also maybe thinking, hey, I got the best guy behind him if something happens. And so, I don't know how much of that is a little bit of hyperbole, right? Like, because you don't totally know at that point. But I think Kyle was also maybe in that moment trying to convince, hey, we need to keep this guy on the roster.
Right. Part of that was they had paid Sudfeld.
Right. And they were going to have to basically pay Sudfeld to go away, in addition to paying Jimmy to stay. Restructured, right. In addition to have the number 3 pick in the draft, who was making the money that he was making and had just been handed the keys to the job for a full offseason in the beginning of training camp. So it's kind of wild when we always assumed, right, that the wildest thing was just Jimmy hanging out on the side field. Like the wildest thing was actually Kyle going, I think Brock might be my best quarterback.
Yeah, it's you remember the game that Lance got hurt and then Garoppolo came in, and a lot of people reacted, maybe overreacted to how happy everybody on the team was that day for
I sure
Jimmy.
did.
You thought it was
palpable.
You thought
it was
just
palpable.
Were you here that day?
I was here. I was in the locker room, and people were disappointed for Trey, but they were far more. Like, that didn't seem like the number one story. The number one story was Jimmy came in and he played great, and we love Jimmy.
I know, and I think at the time we thought, like, wow, they think Jimmy's the better quarterback. But in hindsight, maybe it was we were playing the third best guy that we have.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's usually, I guess it's been a couple years, so now is the time when you go back and kind of get the perspective on that. But
really not that long ago.
It's not that long ago.
I mean, we're not even a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that's pretty telling.
It's pretty telling. And, here he is. And I had forgotten that Brock Purdy's first game action was in that Chiefs game.
Right.
So it all does kind of come full circle.
Yep.
With the Chiefs smoking him, and that was McCaffrey's first game. And, Brock Purdy comes in and at the end of that game and some mop-up duty. And then, here we are a year and a half later and in Vegas.
All right, so I'll do a check-in with you. No, you're fine.
Yeah, I was just making sure
okay. Let's do a check-in. I told MIDDLEKAUFF today, but I want to do a check-in. Like every time we talk, is like, how do you feel today? How do you feel today about the Super Bowl? What do you think right now?
I think the 49ers defense is going to have to be dramatically better than it's been in the first two games to have a chance to win. I feel like the 49ers offense will be prepared. I think they'll put points up on the board. I know that the Chiefs defense is no joke. It's very good. I don't see the Chiefs winning a 17-7 game against the 49ers. Like that's, or 17-10 or what, like it, I feel like the 49ers are going to get into the 20s against the Kansas City Chiefs. But even with maybe a lesser talented Chiefs offense than we've seen, or maybe a less explosive Chiefs offense is probably the best way to put it. They're more up and down the field. Mahomes has got to make the play here and there. They're handing it to Pacheco. He's going to find Kelsey when he needs to find Kelsey. But I still think with Andy Reid and Mahomes, the way the Niners defense is played, that's trouble in this game. It's got to be tightened up. Otherwise, I think this Chiefs team will still get close to 30, if not over 30. And so I think the Niners defense, that really is what I'm circling in this game.
Win the toss, take the ball?
Win the toss and defer.
Win the toss and defer.
You're not changing that. And I don't think you're changing Kyle Shanahan's
I'm good with it.
mind on that.
I'm okay with that. We saw Baltimore get the ball first. Last week, didn't score. Kansas City scores. Baltimore scores. You think this is going to be a 30-point game. It wasn't. I mean, you take out the two 30-point.
You haven't panicked in any of these other games. You're not going to panic now, right? I mean, that's been part of the story.
JD, it is just when you're around it, it is so clear. Just being here the last week, and you'll be in Vegas next week is like one of the biggest challenges. Just has to be not treating this like it's something different than it is, which is a football game, and you can just feel it. Like how that's where I will say one concern. Listening to these guys talk about effort on defense is do they try to get so hyped up on defense because it's gonna be about maniacal effort today that you make an early mistake. Now, I know we say it's different teams, and Fred Warner said it. They are different teams, but some of the most important pieces are here: Mahomes, Warner, Bosa, Armstead.
Yeah. Kelsey on the other side. Like, yes, it's different, but I think when Nick Bosa lines up or Fred Warner's there, and 54 is the mic, and he's looking at Patrick Mahomes' eyes, it's really the same game again. It will feel that way, and I think for those that you just mentioned, it will definitely feel that way. Kind of being back in this surreal. Here we are again.
You just know, no matter how much of the roster is different, if it's Patrick Mahomes that makes a play to beat you, the same thing just happened again. That's all.
No doubt.
And if you beat Mahomes, you just beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
In a Super Bowl after they had won multiple titles.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge deal.
Well, we are in the midst of a Chiefs. They're not a dynasty. They haven't won quite to the degree that.
This is 3 out of 5 if they win this one.
They're a dynasty. They are.
Yeah. It might be 3 out of 5. It might end up being 4 out of 7 or whatever it is. I mean, they're winning a lot.
They're running the league.
They're running the league right now, and I still think this is an opportunity for the 49ers. If they can hone in defensively, and I think that's the big takeaway. And it was Nick Bosa who said in his press conference, watching back the 2019 Super Bowl, the level that defense had played, like that was a Super Bowl defense. Yeah. That was an elite defense. That was a defense that held the Chiefs to 10 points until there were 7 minutes to go, and that was a better Chiefs offense with Tyreek Hill,
right.
And like that was a more explosive Chiefs offense. So you got to find a little of that.
All right, we got to go.
Oh, nice.
Garçon, drive me away.
Nice.